So I just wanted to try and pull the sessions together that we've had today, and there's been quite a nice sort of link and overlap. It's almost as though we planned it today, some of these sessions, the way they've sort of fed off each other, and hopefully not contradicted, but kind of led into each other. And I just wanted to talk about the necessity for change, because we're a room full of pretty much experts. I think that's fair to say. And yet there's still lots of issues we're having on our projects, and 2 or 3 of the sessions so far today have all picked up on that. So this is what we want to try and avoid being, because I do see on lots of projects this is what we end up being, cultural dinosaurs. People are sort of entrenched in how they've done things previously, and we want to get away from being these cultural dinosaurs on projects. When you registered, most of you filled in a little questionnaire. Those of you who did it 2 years ago, you probably dreaded it. Oh God, not one of these questionnaires. I kept it down to about 7 questions this year. It was about 40 2 years ago. But the questions were quite pertinent, and I was interested to see where we're going. And in 2 years, well, we'll see. So not all the questions, but I'm just flashing up some of the ones that are particularly relevant. And where relevant, I'll relate back to the 2012 answers to see what seems to be happening. So the first question, for those of you who registered back 4 months ago, if you remember that far, do you think that contractual should be considered as bad or negative when working under the NEC form of contract? Here was the answer. 99.3% of people said no. 0.7% of people said yes. Now, one of the guys is in the room here today. Now, if someone pushes me at the drinks reception, I'll tell you who it was. And genuinely, he said, "Don't, I misread the question." And you'll be surprised who it was. So I said I wouldn't, but you might be.
Can you CC me in on that?
So I think it's unanimous, okay, that it shouldn't be considered a bad thing, which, okay, I think we all know. And I quite like when I'm doing sort of workshops or something, a very simple demonstration, but I put up on here my very technical bad and goodometer, okay, very technical demonstration. And I ask people, normally at the start of a session, just on that bad and goodometer, on that sliding scale, where would you pitch the word contractual? So the perception of the word contractual, where would it be? And normally, it's roundabout. As a group average, I'd say round about there, at the start of a session, okay? And at the end of the session, I ask people, where are you now on the sliding scale? Now, I do get the feeling at the end of the session, they just tell me what the heck they want to hear, so they want to go home. But I do genuinely think that generally people are down that scale. So particularly people who are new to NEC, they come from an era where, contractual is a bad thing and it's aggressive. Even yesterday, I was with a contractor, and their pitch at tender interviews is that we're not contractual. So it's something we need to be getting away from. And unfortunately, it's the employers that are swaying them down that road, because they think that's what the employers want to hear, because the employers don't like that aspect. So we need to get away from contractual as being, the bad, aggressive stance that the people associate with it, and just think of contractual as following the contract. Okay, so that's something we need to get better at. Because in practice, do you think that being contractual is considered bad or negative by one or other party when working under the NEC form of contract? 85% of people said yes, it is. Now that's, you guys have said that this. So experts who recognise that it shouldn't be the case, but this is your experience of what's happening out there, and that's pretty poor, and it's pretty scary that this is the case. So we're going to look at what we as a group can potentially try and do about that. There were more questions. Where a good relationship exists on a project are the parties. And there was 3 options this time. Just as stringent at managing the contract, a bit less stringent at managing the contract, or a lot less stringent at managing the contract. 2 years ago, there was a 4th option, what contract? I think we've evolved a bit from that, so I didn't have that as an option. And there was surprisingly a few votes for that one. This year, we're 39% saying, yeah, we're just as stringent at managing the contract. Now, first of all, I don't quite believe that number, but even if that number was true, it's too low, because 55% are saying, yeah, we're a bit less stringent at managing the contract where we've got a good relationship. Now, we're all for good relationships. but it shouldn't be at the expense of managing the contract. And there's nearly 10% there who are saying they're a lot less stringent in managing the contract. And we've not evolved too much. There's a few more were a bit less stringent last time, but we're in a fairly similar boat. Okay, so again, that's not moved on too much in 2 years. And we all know clause 10.1. It's quite funny, whenever I ask people what's in clause 10.1, they nearly always tell me the second bit, and a lot less can remember the first bit. And of course, the most important word in clause 10.1, anyone offer what that word is? It's the word and, because it pulls those two elements together, okay? And most projects I see, they've replaced that word. Now, not with a Z clause. The way they conducted themselves, they changed it to the word or, and that's how most projects work. And we laugh, but looking at that, well, that's what all these guys in the middle are doing. Because we've got a good relationship, we're a bit, we don't have to be quite so stringent in managing the contract. So I'd like to think we're going to be a little more educated that that's not going to be the case going forward. Interesting question. From your perspective, what percentage of written Z clauses are worthy, useful, and contribute to making a difference to the management of that project? Okay, so I imagine we've got some people in the room who were like, yeah, very 100%. Some contractors in the room will know 0%. As a group, 29%. Okay, so that's not my answer, that's your answer. And I think that's probably a similar number that I come up with. So 29% are actually worthy and useful and necessary and contribute to effectiveness running the project. Even I could do the maths. That means it's 71%, therefore are not worthy or don't help or actually are detrimental to managing the contract. But we've moved on, because in 2012 the answer was, it was 29%. And I honestly did not fudge that, okay? That was 150, when I did the assessments, we'd had 153 registrations, and I can show you the stats, it was exactly the same number. So again, we keep talking about Z clauses for years. We're all talking about them, we all joke about them, we all laugh about them, we cry about them sometimes. But yet we're not doing anything about it as an industry. And I think, again, I don't underestimate the power of this group. You know, we need to be doing something different. We've got a real great cross-section of senior members of the industry here. We've got to be doing something different. Because 71% of Z clauses, we're saying, aren't helping the project. Do you undertake joint contract training between the key parties on a particular project? Richard and Barry asked this, so we had a bit of a show of hands in the room. But actually, on the surveys that we got from everyone, 60% of people said yes, they did. So that's pretty good. I'd question, well, what's happening to the other 40%? But 60% say yes. And if yes, did you feel it made a positive difference? Well, that looks a no-brainer to me then. So a day's investment, and again, I echo the thoughts of, I like to run that session. I call it a team building session. And yes, there's no raft building, there's no blindfolding or anything like that. But team building now is about just getting to understand the contract. So lots of us do it, and when we do it, it's a fantastic idea, and we all think it has a beneficial result to the project. So why aren't we all doing it? I was with a contractor just a couple of weeks ago. We did some training with them, and the client was coming. We did the session on the Tuesday. The client said, what a great idea. On the Friday, they sent an email. We've had a change of heart. We're not going to do it. We're going to get our own training. So again, completely missed the sort of the intent and the boat, in terms of that session. 2012, 55% said yes, we do them, and 86% found them beneficial. So we're creeping up, or we seem to be. But I really don't see why we're not doing that more on every project that we're undertaking. It's certainly not going to do any harm. Does cost and liability appear to be a big focus consideration in the notification of an early warning and within the subsequent risk reduction meetings? 88% still saying yes. Now I get that, okay, you can't avoid commercial, conversations, but the whole point of the early warning process is that, okay, what does this matter? What can we do about it? And it's the separation of liability and cost that will allow us to get on top of these things and decide what we're going to do about it. Outside of the early warning risk reduction meeting process, then we can worry about whose liability that was. So 88% say, yeah, it's a big focus. And that's even worse than 2 years ago. Similar numbers, but we're certainly not improving. And are early warnings ever taken negatively, i.e. seen merely as a commercial tool from the contractor? What do you reckon? Yep, 84%. Okay, so 84% are still saying that early warnings are taken negatively. So not great when we're trying to get away from this early warning mechanism. We're trying to separate that from being a commercial tool. And the sooner we do that, the more benefits it's going to have on the project. Not a lot different to 2 years ago. So we're marginally better than where we were. There's a well-known experiment with Newton and Apple. Slightly less well-known is the monkey and the banana and the water spray. I don't know if anyone's heard of this. Okay, it is relevant. Okay, stick with me. So a very well-known, in my circle anyway, experiment. And I heard of this about 6 months ago, and I thought it was quite interesting, and it's kind of what I see. And this was the experiment. Okay, stick with it. A group of scientists placed 5 monkeys in a cage with a tall ladder and a bunch of bananas. It wasn't long before a monkey tried to grab the bananas, but when they did, he and the other 4 monkeys were all sprayed with ice cold water. Okay? So, when a second monkey tried to climb the ladder, the researcher would again spray the monkey with ice cold water, as well as the other 4 watching monkeys. You will shut up. So this was repeated again and again until they would all learnt their lesson. Thanks, John and Chris, for the soundbite, by the way. So the conclusion of that element of the experiment was that climbing for the banana equals scary cold water for everyone, so no one climbs the ladder. Okay? So that was end of phase 1. Once the 5 monkeys knew the drill, the researcher then replaced one of the monkeys with a new, inexperienced one. As predicted, the new monkey spots the banana and goes for the ladder. But the other 4 monkeys, knowing the drill, jumped on the monkey and beat him up. The beat-up guy thus learns no going for the ladder, no banana, period, without actually knowing why, and also without ever being sprayed with water. These actions get repeated with 3 more times, each with a new monkey, and astonishingly, each new monkey who'd never received the cold water spray himself and didn't know anything about it would join the beating up of the new guy. Finally, a new monkey was introduced into the cage. It ran towards the ladder, only to get beaten up by the others. The monkey turns with a curious face. "Why do you beat me up when I tried to get the banana?" The other 4 monkeys stopped and looked at each other puzzled. None of them had been sprayed, so they really had no clue why the new guy couldn't get the banana, but it didn't matter because it was too late and the rules had actually been set. And so although they didn't know why, they beat up the monkey just because that's the way we do things around here. Okay. Now, that's what I see. I get to visit a lot of projects in sort of my role and doing audits or training, and that's what I see a lot. But that's how we do things around here, especially when it's the JCT guys who are just coming across to NEC. But that's not what JCT says. So we really do need to get to a place where, you know, we're not those monkeys in the cage, but seemingly that's still where we are. So I don't know. As a group, I think we need to, you know, try and move these things forward. And some of the sessions we've done today, some of the breakout sessions, I really do think we can start to make a difference within the industry. A bit more feedback from the survey. How frequently is a revised programme that's been issued for acceptance formally accepted? Okay, what have we got? So 23%, I think it was, generally every 4 weeks or monthly. So 23% actually get the programme accepted as the contract intends. Of course, that's assuming most programme intervals are every 4 weeks or every month. Okay, so on that basis, only less than 25% do we actually get that. So we got 40%, 39% it was, every 2 to 3 months. So we're only actually at a success rate of 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 programmes. And we then got 20, it's not very good, this 3D graph, 25% circa, just above, rarely accepted. And we then got a few percent, 5% or so, that were never actually accepted, aka East London line. So that's not very good either. So we kind of, as experts, we all know the importance of programme, we've all talked about programme, we all know it, yet it's still not happening on average across our projects. And I think the accepted programme is just about the single most important measure you've got on your project. Commercially, your contract's dying without the accepted programme. You then get into all those scenarios where we have to end up not wanting to, but people then start trying to do things retrospectively, which isn't what the contract says. So the only way we could be doing these things is keeping on top of them, doing them as we go. Yet it's a pretty shocking statistic that we are not getting those programmes accepted anywhere near as regularly as the contract is trying to encourage. Average timescales to move a compensation event from being notified to agreed, i.e. implemented. Less than 4 weeks, 8%. Gold star, okay, for all of those guys who said that. 1 to 2 months, 35%. So you're talking 4 to 8 weeks. Now, okay, realistically, that's probably not too bad, okay, in the scheme of things. What's not quite so good is 37%. It's taking 8 to 16 weeks to sort out a compensation event. And 4 to 6 months, you're up to 14% are taking 4 to 6 months. And there's another 7% that are longer than 6 months. And that's as an average. That was the question we asked. So obviously I'm taking that feedback from you guys. So not great. And again, okay, we know change isn't easy to manage on projects, but we need to be obviously working it through a lot quicker than that. Because if it's taking that long, whose liability is that? Well, we don't know, and neither party understands the liability. So if it's taking that long, neither party have got an understanding of the liability, and that means in terms of outturn cost as well as outturn completion date. So we've got to be a bit better than that as well. So we do seem to be a little bit set in our ways on our projects. I see projects run based on old Z clauses or how we used to do things. So again, from project to project, we talked about running NEC training, and it wasn't me who said it, reminders every year or on a project halfway through, reminding people what your contract actually says rather than what you thought it said, or rather than, well, that's not how we did it on the last job, but your last job had different Z clauses. Claims based on JCT or ICE principles. Verbal instructions still given. Does anyone take a verbal instruction on site? No, of course not. Okay, it's still happening massively on site, and unfortunately, it's the employers who are putting the pressure on the contractor. Well, surely in a spirit of trust and cooperation, you're going to take a verbal instruction from me. Don't you trust me? Whereas clause 10.1 says you've got to do what the contract says, which means you've got to put it in writing. So the employer shouldn't be putting the pressure on the contractor, and verbal instructions are still rife throughout the business. We're acting on projects as though clause 10.1 says or rather than and. So it's an either or. We'll either work in a trustful way in a relationship, or we'll follow the contract. It doesn't say or, it says and. I still see contractors, QSs, putting in a high compensation event quotation, knowing its opposite number will automatically slash it by 30%. And when I say, why don't you just put it in at the real number, and then they've got nothing to slash, they say, nah, they'll still slash it. They won't be able to find it, but they'll still slash it because they know that's what we always do. Again, monkeys, banana, water spray. Okay. See early warnings run as commercial tools. Well, that's what the survey results just told us, that we still are running these early warnings. We're paying too much commercial attention to the early warnings. Never mind, right, what are we going to do about it? Let's come up with the best idea, and then once we've got that, we can step back and understand, well, hang on, by the way, whose liability was that? It shouldn't actually change the decision process. And particularly with option C onwards, whoever's risk it is anyway, is a shared risk because of the nature of the pain gain mechanism. And as has been alluded to as well, and certainly the breakout session, a programme sometimes played lip service by the contractor. Now, both parties are guilty of not managing programmes very well, but yet sometimes the contractor just plays lip service and just does the bare minimum just to try and get a programme across the line. And we're always emphasising the fundamental importance of that accepted programme. And those problems are all just because that's how we've done things around here. So, as an industry or a group, we want to try and avoid being these contractual dinosaurs. But this guy is making headway, because look what he's reading. Okay, he seems to be reading it backwards, but so it's a step in the right direction. So we need to change, and it can start with our group. We need to educate. So sometimes it's the employer who's actually the most guilty party in not following the contract. So not as a rule across the board, but it is quite often, it's surprising, that it's the employer, the contractor's trying to follow the rules, and the employer's throwing it back in their face, saying, why are you raising early warnings? Why are you getting contractual on me? Why can't we just talk about it? When it's actually the employer who's put the rules in place that the contractor is trying actually to follow. Now, they don't always, but that is quite a common problem. We need to create this environment where being contractual is seen as positive, not negative. So we want to be down on that sliding scale on the chart there. Run joint project workshops. So that's been a theme in a couple of the sessions. That's a no-brainer to me in terms of progression for the projects. We can use things like e-learning, obviously, to create a more diverse understanding. So sometimes if people can't get to training, well, we've got e-learning and things like that. E-learning isn't the answer to everything, but it's a great way of getting into lots of people, particularly geographically. They've got no excuse really not to be able to understand the contract. And look at alternative training methods to get the same messages across. So even in the breakout sessions today, there's going to be some great output there that we can actually use to educate people how they should be understanding the contract. And lead by example, and that starts by you as individuals on your projects. If I hear contractors saying, the employer gets all funny if we raise early warnings, I say, well, we'll keep going. Get through it, raise them constructively, make it very clear that what you're doing is constructive, and then you'll change them. I've heard of contractors, saying, all right, I'm not going to take a verbal instruction anymore. And he phoned me up a few days later and said, you caused me untold problems. The project manager went into one for about 2 hours. How dare you? He gave me an instruction verbally, and I said I wouldn't do it, this guy said, unless it was in writing. And he went into one for 2 hours, ranting and raving, don't you trust me? And eventually gave him the instruction. A couple of days later, similar thing happened, but he only raved for an hour before he slapped the instruction down. And towards the end of the week, he slapped the instruction down without actually raving. So again, he just modelled that project manager into doing what he should be doing. And we as individuals can start doing that on our projects. And slowly, or hopefully relatively quickly, we can start getting that groundswell that actually following the contract is a good thing. And as well as individuals, as companies, as parties on a project, we can start spreading that message. That's some of the stuff we've been trying to do with Built Intelligence, myself, Chris and John. And there is a little goodie bag that we're going to follow up with the conference. Now, don't get too excited. It's not a tote bag. It's not a physical goodie bag. But we're going to share with you some stuff electronically, which I think after the conference you'll be pretty interested in. As Reachback, we've now recruited 24 plus experts, and there's several of them in the room today. Raise your hand if you're on the Reachback expert list. Okay, so there's a few in the room here today. We've launched the app, and we were quite excited by that, and that's only literally come out last week. Raise your hand if you've been onto the App Store and downloaded it while you've been here today. Okay, good. So have a play with that and give us feedback, because we're very interested. We want this. It's a free product for the industry to help them understand and have it even, when you're on a train, wherever you can get access to questions. Within Built Intelligence, we've got the free online competency assessments and badges where you can do the tests and obviously assess where you are with your level of competency. We've got some deep dives which we're about to launch as well. So actually in this room a few months ago, some of the experts here, we ran some deep dive sessions where it was a breakout group. I'll just show you literally just for a couple of minutes how this looks. So we picked 3 topics. I did program, surprise, surprise, and we had some other elements that we looked at. And you'll recognise the screen here. So that was back in January. And each of the sessions, we're going to go into detail about particular aspects. And
the first question.
You're bored of my voice, I know that today, but I'll just let it run for a minute, just so you can see how it looks.
And some considerations about how they can be best avoided or mitigated. Firstly, as a group, how do we find the requirements of Clause 31.2? It is quite a big list of elements to be included in a programme, but is it too much of an administrative burden to comply with in the first place? Jeremy.
Looking at this question from
Our 3,000th champagne member talking there.
Project manager within
So
NEC,
you get the idea of the deep dive.
yes, in as much as what it does.
So the deep dive there, we just go through different elements of the contract, breaks it down into a bit of detail, and it's sort of showing who's on the screen, who's talking. So it's just a different format again of education for the group. So we'll share that one with you. Last year we shared the quiz. Now not everyone will have seen this, so again I'll just flash this one up for a minute. And it was the NEC challenge, and we had it was an iPod from memory. Okay. So I'm going to mess this one up. So John Broom. What do you want to be? Okay. So the idea was there was, and again we talk about different ways of educating. This was meant to be a bit of fun, but it turned into quite a bit of competition. There was people taking it very seriously, and we could even see when people were logging on and things like that. So the idea was there was an audit. You've got Phil coming to see you at the end of your project, and you choose the level, easy, medium or hard. Looking around the room, maybe we go hard, and that's really just how long you've got. Maybe not too PC, you get punched if you get it wrong. Does that happen on audits, Phil? Where are you? Is that what happens on audits? Okay. Right. So the idea is if you get a question wrong, then you get punched. So how many compensation events are listed in core clause 60.1? 19? Okay. 19. Well done, John. Okay. Contractors notified the project manager of a compensation event, but after 3 weeks has received no reply. Should the contractor write to the employer, give a detailed situation, send another notification to the project manager, or assume that the project manager accepts that a CE has arisen and submit a quotation? Number 2. Okay, well this is John, so let's get it wrong. So you get punched. So I'll just pick ones at random. Because what I didn't realise was the leaderboard has been running. So, contractual, I assume you'll know this, but what is the contractual sanction or incentive for the contractor to submit a first programme to the project manager for acceptance which shows the information required? I assume everyone knows that. But of course it's 25% price work done to date is retained. So that's a livener to make sure you get the first accepted programme. But let's say it's terminated, which is wrong. And your game over 120 jobs. That's not bad. 120, and do you know that's reset? There was someone called Ian, and it was 2,700 points, which I was looking at yesterday. But so I don't know who that was. It certainly wasn't Heafy. But you could. That's still live. So I don't know if that's reset. But so we got a new leaderboard there, league table. Don't know why that's reset. But anyway, you get the gist. We're developing several more sort of different games, just with a different sort of learning style to enhance the learning. And here's one I wanted to demo today, which is, again, it's not exactly groundbreaking, but it's just a different way of getting the message across. Here is our new pyramid game. And it's not all about knowing clauses, but you should know roughly where to go within the contract. So, group participation. Let's see how we go. Now, this is level 1. We've got 7 levels, okay? And so you've got to work your way through the levels, and it's a pyramid, and there are all your clauses. So as a group, okay, so I'll wait till I've got 3 or 4 answers, and then I'll click the button you used to tell me which clause states that all communications have to be informed, it can be read, copied and recorded. The employers might not know this one. Any offers? 13.1? Very good. Okay, so 2, which clause requires contractor to provide the works in accordance with the works information? 20.1. Okay. Which clause obligates both contractor and project manager to raise early warnings as soon as they become aware of them? Okay, we're getting a few more answers now. That's good. Which clause obligates contractor to show both plan completion and completion dates separately on a programme issued for acceptance? A couple of people haven't said, do we? Which one? 31.2. Okay. Question 4, right. Which clause sets out liability the project manager takes when they accept a communication from a contractor? Which one? 14.1. Okay. Right, this is a bit easy. Right. Who's prepared to go solo for a bottle of beer? Who's going to raise their hand? Who wants the next one? Richard. Okay, well nominated. Okay. So there's your one. Which clause obligates the contractor to show progress achieved and its effect upon the remaining works? 32.1. Bottle of beer. They're free, by the way. But okay. Couple more. Come on. Who else? Any volunteers to go solo? Barry. Okay. Well said, Barry. So, which clause allows the PM to instruct a quotation for acceleration to achieve completion before the completion date? 36.1. Okay. And so on. Okay. I think as a group we get all those. But
just point out, the sad thing is that Stuart Keynes, who's not here today, can tell you that the page number is on as well. That's particularly sad.
yeah, that is pretty sad. Yeah, that is pretty sad. Okay. So that's level one. So again, it's meant to be a bit of fun. Now, most of these you can. Well, hang on. So this one, which clause obligates the project manager to assess the amount due at each assessment date? Well, okay. That's section 5. It's to do with payment. Oh, we've only got one, so that must be clause 50.1. So it's just a nice way of sort of getting around to find the contract clauses. Okay. So again, hopefully useful portals. That as a group we're trying to develop and to trying to upskill, but in a fun way, and it's a bit like our group. The 3,500 people in the group. There's hopefully you'll still see that there's very constructive conversations going on in that group, and very good advice coming out of that group. Any thoughts, just for a second, on that? I mean, what we've talked through today about it's not exactly groundbreaking stuff, and Richard and Barry were saying in theirs, look, we're not coming at radical ideas here, but it's amazing the simple ideas that we're talking about today just isn't happening on projects, or not happening all of the time. So I don't know what we need to do, but we need to be sharing, and getting our industry better, because the potential there for NEC is that we've got a lot more of a transparent contract. We can be doing things better. We're making a lot of work for ourselves. We're making ourselves very difficult. My life very difficult for ourselves. Any thoughts on that? It's late, and there's beer coming. Okay. Okay. Well, that takes us towards our award ceremony, which you've heard of the BAFTAs. The fifth award here, I did think of calling the DAFTAs, but we just kept them as the Built Intelligence NEC People Award. NEC People Award. So we've got 6 awards. Now, the first 3 awards. We've got the £5,000 worth of e-learning, and also the Crystal Trophy that we've got there. So I'll ask a couple of people to come up and present the awards when we get to that stage. So the Employer of the Year. So we had the nominations that I listed earlier. Just done a very brief summary, just on when we reviewed all the nominations, we shortlisted, and the reason we picked these were for some of these aspects. So Connect Plus, we've got Chris here. M25 DBFO, contract managing Area 5 of the Highways Agency, working collaboratively to help build the efficient working community, further down the supply chain as well. Listening, this was quite good, listening to concern from contractors regarding the level of competency from Connect Plus with regard to NEC contract, resulting in increased training for Connect Plus staff. Now that's pretty commendable. I reckon many employers would tell them exactly where to go if the contractor said, but we don't think you're very good at this. So that's pretty commendable, that actually you've got an employer who's willing to listen and embrace. Initiatives in place to improve works information and site information, and joint training in place to collectively understand how the NEC contract needs to be operated, both with regard to processes and behaviours. So that was some of the highlights of the Connect Plus nomination. Liverpool University as Employer of the Year. And they just recently, probably about the last year and a half, they set up their new consultancy and contractor frameworks, which are all now under the NEC form of contract. And they did something quite interesting, which was during the tender period, they actually called all their supply chain in for training mid-tender. Now that was something I hadn't heard of before. So even during the tender process, emphasising, look, this is the contract we're going to be following, and this is how it should be understood. They're also pretty brave to go with the professional services contract for their consultancy agreement, because at the time, the lawyers were suggesting, no, you don't want to do that for whatever reason, and they were going to go with a bespoke contract. Now, a couple of the presentations have talked about that continuity between projects and the fact, Crossrail for one. David was talking about using the NEC across the whole portfolio of the projects, TSC, PSC, pretty much using the whole set. So you've got the same language and jargon. Just imagine the problems that can cause, where you've got contractors under NEC and designers under some kind of bespoke form of contract. The university also challenged their own lawyers to reduce the Z clause amendments by 50%. So the lawyer came up with a list of Z clauses, and it was the team themselves, having done some NEC training, that actually challenged the lawyers and said, well, okay, why do we need it? And when they said why they needed it, said, nope, still not hearing you, why do we need it? And if a second time it didn't go, then it was like, well, okay, we don't need it then. Now, the Z clauses weren't ridiculous level in the first place, but they really wanted to condense them down. And they've done project training on the early projects they've done jointly as well. Staffordshire County Council with Balfour Beatty highway schemes. So the feedback there from Balfour Beatty, over about 14 schemes over the last 3 years. Consistent and fair, accurate administration of the contract over 14 schemes, not interpreting it simply to their own advantage, which isn't the case on every project. The clients, the employers' approach of trust is there to be lost rather than built over time means that they could get going straight from the early outset. And again, that's quite brave. Contractors are a bit sneaky sometimes, aren't they? So you might be a bit wary, but otherwise it's like, well, no, we'll trust you in the absence of not being able to trust you. So again, not exactly groundbreaking, but pretty innovative in our industry. There was feedback from the subcontractors that even when the contractor wasn't there, they were playing golf or raft building or something probably, the client was actually there and receptive, and they would talk to them, and it was that kind of open relationship that they had on that project, and very much a sort of collaborative approach, joint branding, project branding, co-location, and over a number of schemes, not just one scheme. It's fairly easy to do it on one scheme, but over a number of schemes, that seems to have gone very well. South East Water, working with BAM Nuttall, so some highlights there, cost loading of programmes and monitoring, transparency of compensation and quotations, so they set up standard forms to agree. We talked about that in one of the breakout sessions upstairs, so just having a standard way of presenting compensation events for one allows the acceptance and negotiation to change a lot quicker. Lessons learnt, sessions periodically and revisited during the life of the project, and meeting technical challenges through ECI works as well. I'd like to invite Frank Wies up from BIW, who's travelled over, how much of a Freudian slip can I do with you guys today? Conject, that's, if Frank would like to come up and give is Frank here? Well, Duncan then, even better. So Duncan Niller, who's Head of Product Development here for Conject, if you'd like to open the envelope, so let's get the right one. So the Employer of the Year.
And the Employer of the Year is Staffordshire County Council.
Come up. Okay, well done, Mark. Thank you. And well done to the other nominated employers within that category. Contractor of the Year. So we shortlisted 5 nominations for Contractor of the Year. So Delatim, working on LU's station stabilisation programme, working with LU, understanding new and innovative construction management strategies. So LU are going through management at the moment where they're going further down the supply chain. So they're managing more of the works themselves. So they're going to smaller contractors, and that's the sort of new station stabilisation intent at the moment. Particularly, they reported with Delatim embracing the collaborative working principles of the NEC, including design development and accurate forecasting, and in a cost reimbursable environment. And certainly the planning, collaborative planning regime, so they've stepped up across the portfolio. Planning stability was about 30-40% success rate, and with Delatim they were up to 90%. So Delatim nominated there. NES for their nuclear decommissioning work with the NDA, Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. Slightly more interesting project. They were delivering an SEP mobile cave waste retrieval contract. So one of the most complex nuclear decommissioning projects in the world. So there's not loads of them, but so the teams from Sellafield and NES worked together. A lot of challenges. You can imagine in the nuclear environment, a lot of challenges, finite completion date, lots of compressed design, very flexible. NES were found to be very flexible, working around the clock as well, to making sure that the programme was met and the quality along the way. Costain for the Walton Bridge project, Surrey County Council, and some of the highlights there, 350,000 hours work with no reportable incidents. And Surrey reporting, that's just an indicator. Okay, it's not NEC specific, but it's an indicator of a very well run project, which was a particularly complicated scheme. Costain heavily involved with the community public meetings and other stakeholders, and did become part of the community for the 2 years during the life of the project. NEC contract was administered to actually drive the effective team working between the parties, creating an integrated team to deliver an exceptional project. And that comment was from John Fury, who's the Cabinet Minister for Transport. So the NEC contract allowed flexibility for the Council, in particular on that project, to make lots of changes during the project following public inquiries that were no doubt a lot too late, really, for the project team, but they overcome those problems and the NEC processes they used to drive for a very successful project. Osborne, Northern Road Bridge replacement down in Portsmouth, and the Portsmouth County Council reporting there just the general attitude and professionalism of the whole team to administer the NEC contract. Again, very difficult project to time and budget. They were demolishing and rebuilding a bridge and having to keep one lane of traffic open. So a lot of their works were done in 2-hour working windows. So again, imagine the complexity of the project there. And a number of key deliverables there that were met with minimum disruption to the public. And again, heavily involved in public forums down there. BAM Nuttall, working with South East Water. So BAM, again, the cost loading of the programmes, the transparency to be able to present compensation events to at least get to a stage where the other party knew what they were indicating and could decide whether they were going to accept it or not. It doesn't mean that they were just going to walk over and say, oh, well, okay. But at least if you've got a standard pro forma away and a way of reviewing it, then a lot more likely that it's going to be accepted. Lessons learnt periodically during the life of the project, and there was a lot of early contractor involvement there to meet the various technical challenges they had on that particular project. So I'd like to invite Chris Core up from Built Intelligence, and he can open the magic gold envelope and see who the winner of the Contractor of the Year is. It's one of those.
I know which end that is. Have a read of the award. Okay. There you go. Contractor of the Year.
And the winner is Costain. Bill? Project Innovation of the Year. Now, this is genuine. We had a nomination, not from Built Intelligence, but someone put forward the Reachback app a couple of weeks ago. They said they thought it was a fantastic innovation to the industry. Now, first of all, as we were on the panel for deciding who wins the awards, we didn't think that would be necessarily politically correct. Plus, we'd be winning our own e-learning that we helped write. So we appreciated the nomination, but we thought there was more worthy winners out there. BAM Nuttall, the project on a page reporting. Apologies, Richard, I should have inserted a picture so you don't get the nice visual of this. But we talked, lots of projects have project controls, but they were put forward for a particularly innovative project control system, on a big sheet of paper, but a lot of sort of indices, KPIs to do with program, cost variance, all on one page that was allowing for sort of pragmatic level of cost capture. Magnox, supply chain training. Now, this might not seem particularly innovative. It's, training, but it's the way it was carried out and the particularly success rate that they had and the way they went about it. And it just shows that actually we talk about innovation, but actually just doing fairly simple stuff well can lead to massive benefits. So they have got a £75 million work stream on this particular aspect, and they drilled in and did a heck of a lot of joint training workshops and masterclasses on their NEC3 suite of contracts. But that was across their whole supply chain, and they were integrated sessions. So there wasn't one session where it was a them and us. They ran a series of these, and as well as the training, other workshops, there was other initiatives and behavioural improvements that across 17 contracts exceeded all of the Magnox contract benchmarks that they had for their other projects, resulted in over 85% of the contracts having an accepted programme each month. Now, I don't think Magnox would mind me telling you that the average at one point was down to 40%, and prior to that having been lower than that. So particularly good result. And the volume of communications following those sessions increased by 170%. Not all of you might think that's a good thing, that the communication level increases by 170%. But as long as it's worthy communications, that's creating that transparency between the parties, then that's a good thing. And it certainly was in reflective of the projects. Early warnings being actioned in a prompt manner. CEs dealt with on an average of in under 6 weeks. So again, they're on the scale in terms of, that's pretty quick. We couldn't expect it much quicker than that within our industry. And forward-thinking support program for NEC users, so joint supply, project team training days, workplace mentoring, joint NEC contract management systems, so across the supply chain. So that really hit a note for us in terms of assessing the potential winner of this award. London Underground. London Underground might feature a bit later on in the session, in session 5, but credit where credit's due, where they've introduced a value engineering ratio. Now, this was a discussion we had a little while ago on the LinkedIn forum. I don't know if you picked up on this, but it's talking about where it's contractor design, then if the contractor proposes value engineering, then the total of the prices doesn't change. So the contractor then gets benefit in the VE that he's putting forward. Arguably unfairly, under option A, potentially gets the full benefit. Option C, you share the benefit between the parties. What it doesn't allow is if it's employer design scheme, there's not really much. If the contractor comes up with a good idea, the employer says, that's a fantastic idea, we'll do that, we'll make that a compensation event, and now we'll lower the total of the prices, and now you lose fee. So that's not particularly a good thing to incentivise a contractor to put forward value engineering. So London Underground introduced a value engineering ratio into their contract, particularly to pick up on option A schemes, where the contractor is then encouraged to come up with value engineering, and the value engineering ratio in contract data part 1 will be changed to suit the particular requirements of that project. Okay, so that was quite an interesting innovation. Crossrail, David and Sean have had to shoot off, but I know there's some Crossrail guys left. And again, the geotechnical baseline report, they introduced this GBR for their tunnelling projects. So what they said was, okay, tunnelling, there's a big risk in the ground, so we'll set a baseline as to what we believe the ground conditions will be. So rather than 6112 is pretty subjective, isn't it? Unforeseen ground conditions, well, it doesn't say ground, unforeseen physical conditions that would have had such a small chance of occurring, it would have been unreasonable for the contractor to allow for it. So it's about the woolliest clause in the contract, but only because unforeseen conditions are generally unforeseen, so it's hard to ring fence what they should be. So they introduced a report, and it was probably more pessimistic than optimistic, and as David said earlier, all of their contracts 50-50, gain share, pain share. So anything that was worse would be a compensation event, and the contractor wouldn't disbenefit. Any better conditions went straight to gain share. So again, for a big client on a project like that, quite an innovative idea. Derek Brown from Technology Resourcing. There's only one award left, so you can't open the wrong one. So if you'd like to announce the winner of the Project Innovation.
So the winner of the Project Innovation is Magnox.
All right, Roger. We've got beer to drink, so. Just a photo that way. Okay, Best Z clause of the year. This is a quick one. Wasn't that? Not too many nominations. And interestingly, the ones that happened to come up were around sort of the early warning process. Again, credit to London Underground. They're not the only ones who've done this, but a risk reduction meeting interval introduced into contract data. So encouraging the fact that, look, we will be having regular risk reduction meetings. So why not set that into contract data part 1? That we will have a risk reduction meeting every 2 weeks. If there's not much to talk about, it'll be a quick one. Okay, so that was quite a good clause. 32.1, revised programme shows the effects of decisions reached and approved by the project manager at risk reduction meetings. I thought that was quite useful in terms of sometimes we have a risk reduction meeting and the contractor's saying, well, okay, we talked about lots of stuff there. So if the project manager's making it clear and giving instructions as a result of that, then the potential to show that in the programme, I thought potentially was a good thing. And normally I'm not keen on this, but I saw a Z clause for the avoidance of doubt. Now, I'm normally a bit sceptical when I read these, but here I actually saw it as a good thing. Now, arguably unnecessary, but if for the avoidance of doubt, it emphasised that the risk reduction meeting does not decide responsibility or increase, decrease in the prices. Now, you shouldn't need to say it, but it does no harm. But B, it actually clarifies something quite important, and it should actually free people up to think, okay, so the early warning process isn't about cost. So don't particularly need it, but that one was a good place to do that. Those were the only nominations I had. Now, I'm sure there are, not all Z clauses are a waste of time. We need Z clauses fact, okay? So let's not jump on a bandwagon that suggests, oh no, Z clauses are a bad thing. It's just 71% of them are bad, okay? Okay, worst Z clause of the year. Okay, so I'll cut this short, okay, so I'll just rattle through these. So this is the bad example for the avoidance of doubt. Now this is what I normally expect. For the avoidance of doubt, clause 63.3, for the avoidance of doubt, if the effects of a compensation event are to bring forward the planned completion, then the completion date will be moved forward by the same amount. That's completely contrary to what the contract says, okay, complete opposite. But they just slip in a for the avoidance of doubt, and they've not amended the original clause. What have you now created there? An ambiguity, okay? And an ambiguity will be found in favour of the one who didn't create the ambiguity, unless you get a Z clause that says where we've done ambiguities, well, they're your risk as well. So look out for the double header there. Clause 61.3, contractor can notify a compensation event if the project manager hasn't, and then we've got this time bar that we're all aware of. If the contractor doesn't notify within 8 weeks a compensation event, they lose the right to additional time or money, unless the project manager should have notified but hadn't. Deleted as a Z clause, and even worse, not tracked changed. Okay. Now, for a contractor who's okay, they should read the contract, but not quite so experienced. They skip through, and it's like, yeah, that seems the same. That now means that allegedly that all compensation events are now time barrable, if that's a word, even if the project manager should have done it. Okay. Yes, I know. So it's not without its problems, and it's not the quick fix that employers think it is. Okay, but you can see their intent, and it wasn't a particularly nice intent, I don't think. Now, if I had to nominate, I think this would. I only got this one about 4 weeks ago. This is a genuine clause. I don't make these up. Okay, same clause. So, contractor can notify a compensation event. And the second bit, if the contractor doesn't notify within 8 weeks, they lose the right to additional time or money unless the project manager should have notified but hadn't. Okay, the Z clause was, please delete the second bullet and replace with the following. Now, I'll have a go. Let me see how far I get on one breath. Providing that notification, which notification shall include as a minimum a revised programme by the contractor in accordance with the terms of this... No, I'm not even going to try, okay? It's 143 words, I counted, I'm that sad. There's no full stop. If there was, it would be at the end. Now, I've read that 12 times. Now, there's a bottle of champagne there. It's not for this, but I could say, well, anyone tell me what it means? And I might give you that bottle. I think what they're trying to say is, as part of the notification, they wanted a programme. But the programme actually comes with the quotation phase, not the notification. And absolutely, really bizarrely, I don't know if they've noticed, but they deleted the time bar. So they've now actually put in this real, I don't know what it's meant to do, but they've actually deleted the time bar, which means the contractor's now not time barred. So trying to be sneaky and putting all this rubbish, this wording in, and yet they've taken out the time bar, which is there for a reason. You know, the time bar is to make sure we keep moving things along. Remember NEC2, the good old days? Yeah, unfettered discretion. That's the word of the day, or 2 words of the day. Can I emphasise for a couple of people in the room who are like writing things down? These are bad clauses. Okay. This was a corker. Engineering construction short contract. So if the contractor doesn't issue a quotation within 1 week, what should happen then under a short contract? What should the project manager do? Assess himself? No, contractor loses the right to any associated additional time or cost as a result of that event. Okay. Now, all that does is encourage the contractor to put in a quote for approximately £1 million, I reckon. And if it's a big one, 8 million, just in case. Because all it's going to do, if I've got a quote in, then the PM's got to go and make his own assessment. So if they don't put their quote in within a week, then they lose the right to additional time or money. I'm not making these up. Project manager notifies the compensation event at the time of giving the instruction. He also instructs the contractor to submit a quotation. The contractor puts the decision into effect. That's an edited version of clause 61.1. Okay? So that's quite important because it means that a project manager's instruction, we are doing it whilst we're going to follow the compensation event process through and sort out what it's worth. Okay? This said clause said the contractor puts the decision into effect if the project manager accepts the quote. Now, if you just think that through for a second, that now means that that's made every compensation event an equivalent of 61.2. So you can't you proceed if they've accepted the quote. But the whole point of 61.1 is, in the meantime, you're proceeding with the works. I can't tell you which project this was on, unfortunately, but it was a major airport in the UK, and it wasn't Gatwick. Clause 50.3, 1/4 of the price work done to date is retained until the contractor submitted a first programme to the project manager for acceptance, showing the information the contract requires. Most of us know that now. The 25% withheld. An increasing Z clause and on subsequent programmes, just very casually mentioned. Now, I get the point of needing to do something possibly, because some contractors just don't do it. But then to say on subsequent programmes, which can be not accepted on a relative whim, then that's going to cause lots of problems. Okay. And it also note, it says 25%. So 11 months into a 12-month project, that's now 25%, not since the last accepted programme, it's for the whole caboodle. Okay. Contractors, is cash flow generally still twitchy to you, or are you pretty relaxed about that these days? So I see that actually causing quite a lot of harm, and there's other ways of encouraging that process to work. This one. Compensation events, and I've seen this an increasing number of times, they just pick this one. Delete clause 60.1, which is the supervisor causes unnecessary delay. Now, I don't know why they picked this one out. I think there's a lot of supervisors running amok out there, and rather than rein them in, it's like, well, let's just let them do it, and we'll make that a contractor risk. A very crazy one, or I don't really get, why they would be adding that as a Z clause. So, I think that's enough bad practice for now, so we will move on. Now, this is the one I didn't want to announce before the event, because I imagined a flurry of activity, saying, oh no, pick me. So I didn't tell anyone that we were doing this, and we've got a number of experts that give a heck of a lot of time and detail to our group members within both the Build Intelligence NEC People group and the Reachback. They are doing it for free. Now, obviously, there's reputation and there's benefits that come out of it, but at the end of the day, they're giving fantastic advice for free, and this is helping our group as a community here. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who contributes into the group, making this such a success and a valuable commodity, hopefully, to the industry. And hopefully today's session is demonstrating what a valuable commodity to the industry that this is. There is one individual in particular this past year I think has been given particularly a considerable amount of time. So I didn't think they'd want a glass trophy. I thought they might want some of this. And even though he's a lawyer, he's not actually a bad bloke. Mr. Rob Horn. Okay. Fancy that, I'm overrunning, 20 past, so 2 minutes. So big thank you to the sponsors for helping this day be put on. It's a great event. I'm proud and glad to be part of it. Especially big thanks obviously to K&O Gates for allowing us to host at this fantastic facility. And thanks to the other sponsors who obviously put in money to let this event happen. As you can imagine, even with the venue here, it's not a cheap day. So a big thank you to the sponsors for their continued investment into the group. Thanks to the speakers, particularly today. It's always a good year, but particularly today, I think there was a lot of thought-provoking discussions. You know, we've got a lot of experienced people here within the room, and yet I hope that there's been a lot of learnings and a lot of thought-provoking and debates that have come out. And, you know, thanks for you, the audience. So what's next for the group? Just a couple of pointers. Pretty much the same slide I flashed up last year. Keep some of the trivia out of discussions. It's LinkedIn, not Facebook. Now, we are very good as a group. Up until this week, I've only deleted 6 comments. This week, I deleted 6 comments. 3 from Mr. Broom, 3 from Mr. Horn. Okay? And very respected members of our group. But even we like a little bit of humour in the group, but a little bit of tit-for-tatter sort of went on. But even that, you know, joking apart, there's very little management this group needs because we as a group keep it in check. And we have a bit of humour in there as well, which I think is important. But it's, you know, it's not a waste of people's time going into this group. There's no other LinkedIn groups I spend a lot of time in because they're a lot more, you know, there's a lot more rubbish going on within those groups. Use spell check, not spill check, before posting. So I do think there's some fantastic answers. Sometimes you lose a bit of credibility when it, you know, it's littered with spelling mistakes. Use the group even more to post discussions and issues that benefit from the experience available within the group. So we're using it, but use it more. You know, use the LinkedIn group. I've even heard now projects have actually posted questions as a project team as a kind of early mediation into, well, this is what's happened on our project. You know, what do you think? Now, there's no harm in doing that at all. And it's like, well, if they get 3 or 4 or 6 experts all telling them, yeah, that you know, it's right, well, then that kind of helps the project team sort of going forward. So why not? You know, we've got a fantastic group here. Visit the archive discussions as a library of useful information. So I'll post that in the next couple of days. So you've got an archive list of all of the recent conversations that have gone on in the past year. So what's next in the medium term? Well, following on from today, we will send you a feedback survey just to make sure we think it's a good event, but we'll just get you feedback and also ideas for future conferences. The presentations will be made available. So each of the presentations, we've got Stephen at the back there, who's done a great job videoing. And so we're going to do a very light edit on these sessions, and they're going to be available. And available for the community who obviously weren't able to make it today. So we've got guys over in Australia and New Zealand who are very strong advocates of the group. William travelled all from South Africa. I caught up with William last night, and he's actually come in just for the conference, which he's either really mad or really switched on. That yes, it was really worthwhile, and hopefully it was worthwhile for them coming along today. Masterclass outputs. So each of the sessions, there was some really good information, and it's again information coming from you. So we're going to produce those as some kind of sort of white papers or guidance material. So look out for that. We'll announce those within the group. And as Built Intelligence, we'll be issuing you some extra elements that we've got coming up in the coming weeks. Bless you. More importantly, what's next for the short term? Well, I don't know about you, that looks pretty damn good to me. So I think that's what should be next. Thanks for your participation. We've got drinks next door on behalf, again, K&L Gates, who are excellent hosts. So stick around with hour and a half we've got here until they kick us out. So thanks for your input. Hopefully I'll see a lot of you before next year. But thanks for your input today.